Hello everyone. So the next chapter that we're going to cover is blood, which is chapter 17, right? So we will start from the functions of blood, three different types of function that blood does: transport, regulation, and then protection. Then we'll talk about the physical chemical composition of blood. Why is it a connective tissue? Then we'll talk about plasma, which is a component of blood. Then we'll talk about the cells. The first cell that we're going to talk about is erythrocytes, which is the red blood cells, which has a component called hemoglobin. So we'll talk about that, and then finally we'll talk about erythrocytes and its abnormalities, and then we'll move on to the next. So what is blood? So blood, like we know, it's our internal transport mechanism. It's a fluid system, it's a part of the cardiovascular system, it's an internal transport mechanism process, life sustaining. We cannot survive without blood. So therefore, when we talk about the functions of blood, there are three types of function that blood can do for us. First of all, obviously transport. Secondly, it can regulate. There are certain steps that things that it can regulate, and then it also offers us protection from some things. So when we talk about transport, what does it transport? First of all, it delivers oxygen, which is required for us to survive, right? So oxygen is delivered through, we get oxygen from air, from our respiratory system, through our lungs, and it gets mixed into the blood, and heart pumps it throughout our system. So oxygen. Second is nutrients. What kind of nutrients we're talking about? We're talking about carbohydrates, fats. These are the nutrients we're talking about. That is main macromolecules, big molecules of our body. It transports the metabolic wastes to lungs and kidneys for elimination. Anything that we don't need is eliminated through kidney and then lungs. Lungs, though, mainly eliminates carbon dioxide. And then, of course, we'll spoke about this, transports hormones from endocrine organs to the target organs. Remember, all the anti-respiratory hormone that we spoke about, all is transported with blood. What kind of regulation it does? It regulates, first of all, temperature. If you remember the homeostasis mechanism, by absorbing and distributing heat. So for example, when we are feeling hot or we are feeling cold, our blood vessels either dilate or constrict. With the help of that, we actually can control our body temperature. It maintains the normal pH of our body, right? So blood has a specific pH, and that is the pH of our body that is required for us to sustain. It uses an alkaline reserve of bicarbonate ions, right? So bicarbonate ions really buffers the system. If we cannot survive in too acidic condition of our blood or neither too basic condition of our blood. And then it also provides adequate fluid volume in our body. Protection, what does it protect us from? First of all, blood plasma has numerous proteins, and there is platelets that initiate blood clot formation. Why is it important? For example, you get a cut, the blood comes out, and if it continues, then obviously we'll start losing blood. So there are some specific properties of blood. The specific types of proteins exist in blood, and platelets. Platelet, by the way, is a type of cell component in blood. These proteins in plasma, again a part of the blood, and then the platelets, again a cell of the blood, they have these special proteins which help the blood to clot. So first thing. Secondly, prevents infection. How? Because blood has white blood cells. We will talk about this just in our next sequence of videos, like what are the white blood cells and how they help us in protecting from infection, foreign substances. Then there are complement proteins and antibodies. These are also, all these three are agents of the immune system, immunity. So they are, when we will talk about the immune system, we'll also talk about them. So blood has these antibodies and complement proteins and WBCs, white blood cells, which actually help us protect us from foreign infections, foreign virus, bacteria, all of that. Now, what is blood composed of? First of all, it is a tissue. It's a connective tissue and the only fluid tissue. Remember, this is a connective tissues, right? The matrix. So if we take a drop of blood, what we will see, there's a lot of matrix in there, and that is plasma, right? Within plasma, there are different kinds of cells present. Some are tiny, some are big, but there are different types of cells present. And these cells are called as formed elements. All of these cells are suspended within plasma. So, plasma is the fluid stuff within which these cells are really suspended. Okay, so these are the formed elements that are suspended in there. There are three types of formed elements or cells that blood has. First of all, red blood cells or RBC, or erythrocyte. Again, cyte means cell. Leukocytes or white blood cells or WBCs, and then platelets. Three types: RBC, WBC, and erythrocyte and platelets. All right. Now, if you actually take a small drop of blood and then spun it in a high speed, which you will actually do in your blood lab, you will spun the blood, and then what will you see? If you do this, and you will see something like this. So at the very bottom, actually, at the very bottom, you will see this red thing, which is nothing but the erythrocytes. Why? Because erythrocytes are the heaviest element. So they are 45% approximately of the whole blood. And since they're heavy, so if you spun the blood in a very high speed, then you will see the erythrocyte is kind of depositing at the bottom. Okay, that should be around 45% of the blood. On top of that, there will be small buffy coat. Okay, little bit visible. This is a thin and whitish color, and what does it have? It has the um, um, white blood cells and the platelets, which is the other formed elements. So erythrocytes are approximately 45%. This buffy coat, which is the WBC, and the platelets, they will be 1% or less than 1%. And plasma will be approximately 55%. So plasma is still the major component. So if I ask you what is the composition of blood, you will say 45% plasma, approximately 45% white red blood cell, and 1% or less is basically the RBC and then the platelets. Now hematocrit, you will again learn more about this in lab, but hematocrit is really the percent of blood volume that is in RBC. So for example, for this person, we are seeing 45% of the whole blood. So this person's hematocrit is 45%. Generally, this is around the range for any adult person. Should be between 45, 46, 47. So it's basically the amount or the percentage of RBC in a whole blood volume. Right? Now, if I see the physical characteristics of blood, I'm sure you've seen that it is sticky, it's an opaque fluid, you can't see anything to it, and then of course there is a metallic taste into it, there is a metal smell that comes into it. Why it is that? Because blood has metal. And what kind of metal? It's basically iron. So iron actually gives that metallic taste or the smell. The color actually varies for blood. Typically if you have high oxygen level in blood, it will be scarlet red. If it's low in oxygen, then it will be dark red. Okay, and like I was telling you before, pH of blood has a specific range. Okay, what is that specific range? We have learned about this before in 208 also. It's between 7.35 to 7.45, and this should be the pH range. You should memorize this and remember this. If it's less than this, then blood is too acidic, and that's a problem. If it's too basic, then also that's a problem for us. Blood actually makes us 8% of our body weight. Okay, an average volume in a male, it's typically 5 to 6 liter. In females, 4 to 5 liter, but it can vary from person to person also. Alright, so blood plasma. Since blood plasma is one of the major component, first thing we'll talk about in blood component or blood composition is the blood plasma. What is it? So we have seen that this is the plasma doesn't have any color. So it's kind of a straw color, okay, which is like almost no color, of sticky fluid, and almost 90% of plasma is actually water. Therefore, it doesn't have much color. What is in there? First of all, there are nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all of that. Gases. What kind of gases? Oxygen, carbon dioxide, of course. These are the two gases that actually flows around in our body, main two gases. Hormones. All the hormones are actually present in the plasma. Waste. And where is this waste going? Mostly into the kidneys. Then plasma has many special types of protein, which we'll just talk in a second. And then also there are inorganic ions, sodium, potassium, all of that, right? So these are the list of the stuffs that we have in plasma. So water is 90% of that blood, and that is very important because it has all the it is the dissolving medium for solutes, and then it's an absorbent of heat as well. There are huge number of inorganic ions, which are the electrolytes, like I said, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, all of these, and also chlorine, which is anion. Chlorine, phosphate, sulfate means negative ion. Bicarbonate, we just spoke about bicarbonate, that's a buffer for blood. So these are all present in plasma. And there is a huge ton of plasma protein present. About 8% of plasma is actually just protein. There are many proteins, for example, albumin, globulin, fibrinogen, all of that. But albumin is the main protein. 60% of plasma protein is albumin. Okay, what does it do? It functions as a carrier of other molecules like blood buffer and contributes to the osmotic pressure. So it sort of maintains the composition of plasma, right? The other one is globulin. Globulin is also 36% of the plasma protein. Okay, globulin is super important when it comes to blood, and why we will just know about it in our next lecture. And then finally, fibrinogen. What is fibrinogen? Fibrinogen is a protein, plasma protein, that is required for blood clotting. So all of these are super important. Okay, actually one of the main job that globulin does is, if this globulin is produced by liver, one of the main thing that it does, it basically transport different kinds of metal ions, right? Metal ions, then antibodies, all of that is transported. Metal ions and antibodies, the most important function. So these are the main plasma proteins. There are non-protein substances also, for example, urea, uric acid, but these are mostly metabolic products and mostly waste products. Sometimes it can have nutrients, organic nutrients, of course. For example, like I said, it will have carbohydrate, it will have fats, amino acids, all of that. Then you have respiratory gases, which is nothing but oxygen and carbon dioxide mainly. So all of that is present in plasma. And then all the steroid and thyroid hormones. Remember from last chapter, this is carried out by blood, and basically their carriers are nothing but the plasma proteins, carriers of these hormones. So this takes to your first concept check. The major function of the most common plasma protein, albumin, is, so what does it do? Does it maintain plasma osmotic pressure? Yes, it does. We just discussed that it is a major contributor to plasma osmotic pressure, right? So therefore, yes, buffering changes in plasma pH because it has all these ions. So definitely it has contributes to pH, and fighting foreign invaders. Is that true? Yes, because it also has antibodies, right? So therefore, it is a part of the fighting the foreign invaders. Therefore the right answer will be both A and B. So D is the right answer. Or rather, I would say, yeah, actually all of these are correct. So all of these are more or less correct. So all of these are right answers. Now, how would you elaborate the transport function of blood? So we have already discussed this thing. So what is the transport function? That is the first function that we discussed. You can get it from there. For example, the first thing that blood transport is oxygen and nutrients. And these are the transport functions. So you can work on this on your own. Okay. So the next thing is formed elements. And what are the three formed elements, which are nothing but the cells? So we are talking about here RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. Now, before we even begin, we just have to understand these are cells, but these are not mostly complete cells. For example, WBCs are the complete cells. Why? Because they have nucleus. Okay, they have nucleus. But RBCs don't have any cell, any organelle, anything. Platelets are not even complete cells, they are just cell fragments. And most formed element, they don't survive very long, they survive just for a few days. It depends between RBC, WBC and platelets, but only survives for few days. And most blood cells actually originate in bone marrow, and they do not divide. Okay, they originate, they function, and then they die. That's it. If you see a blood under microscope, this is what you will see. Mostly you will see RBC, because that is the most amount of formed element is RBC. In between you will see these little cells, which are nothing but the WBCs, and there are different kinds of WBCs which we will discuss later in the later videos. So these are the different kinds of WBCs, this and this blue stain color that you see, these are the nuclei. So they have nucleus, and this tiny little things, it's not even properly visible, these are the platelets. So that's what we will see when we try to see a blood cell under microscope. All right, so next actually we will start talking about erythrocytes from our next part of the video. All right, okay, see you then.